Hello, BookTube. It's Thursday, and no one knows where you are, and I'm equipped with an uncharged 9-volt battery and an ordinary length of shoestring. And that means it's time for TBR torture. I have 6 books I want to show you, 3 I have not read, and 3 I have read, and the 3 I have read are recommendations. One is a very qualified recommendation, the other is a far less qualified recommendation, and the third is a rave, something you should all go out and buy. So we'll start with the 3 that I haven't read. And the first one I think is a June release. It's late getting to me. It's this one. It's Vivienne Gornitz's book Vanishing Ice, which is all about the ice cover of the world and how it's thinning and disappearing. The not just the ice caps, but also valley glaciers and ice fields of one kind or another, and what it means. And it looks like this is from the folks at Columbia University Press, and it looks like this is extremely detailed, and I'm just hoping that the author makes it accessible. I've read a lot of books on this subject in the last year, so I don't need to be that accessible, but charts and graphs always make me willies. Then this next one is a bit of an oddity. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. We'll see. This is by Kira Jane Buxton, and it is called Hollow Kingdom. And it has a cover blurb by Helen MacDonald, who's the author of H is for Hawk, calling it transformative, poignant, and funny as hell. And you don't often see those words all together like that. And this is a story of a domesticated crow. ST is a domesticated crow, a bird of simple pleasures. He spends his days hanging out with his owner, Big Jim, avoiding the slobbering affection of Jim's loyal but dim-witted dog, Dennis, and trading insults with Seattle's wild crows, binge-watching nature documentaries, and binge-eating the finest food humankind has to offer, Cheetos. Then, on a beautiful summer evening, Big Jim's eyeball falls out of his head, and ST starts to feel like something isn't quite right. When his tried-and-true remedies, from beak-delivered beer to an inventive cocktail of stolen pharmacy drugs, fail to bring Jim back to health, ST is left with no choice but to abandon his old life and venture out with his trusty steed Dennis to find a cure. So this is a book about a domesticated crow and a dog braving the wilds of Seattle in order to bring their owner back to life. I don't have any idea what to make of that, but it's on my list for next. And the third one I've heard quite a bit about, and I haven't got to it yet, but the author's, I don't know if it was his last book, but he wrote The Internet of Us, which I liked very much. And the author is Michael Patrick Lynch, and his new book is Know-It-All Society. And there was, I think it was on the pub sheet, there was a line that I really liked. Yes, the author brilliantly dissects the age of arrogance, which, when sides are chosen no matter the stakes, and all discourse is zero-sum, not just us versus them, but us over them. Those 2 lines, that all contests are zero-sum, not just us versus them, but us over them, that's good stuff, and I'm hoping that kind of thinking is reflected in the book. This author has pleased me before, but the subject of how the internet is poisoning society is one that can trip even the surest author into windy bloviating. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen here. It's not a long book, so it won't take me more than an hour to do, pencil in hand. So those are the 3 that I haven't read, and I'm looking forward to them. And then we have the 3 that I have read. And the first one is the kind of sort of tepid recommendation, although in a way it's a huge recommendation, but only for a tiny sliver of people. That's what makes it a quivery recommendation otherwise, because it's the latest book in a long series. It's by far the biggest book in that series, and if you haven't been reading the series, then I don't know what I'm going to be able to tell you. And even if you have read the series, you might think, well, it's not all that good. This is Pierce Brown. This is the latest book in his Red Rising series. This one is called Dark Age. And it's a great big golden thing coming out from the folks at Del Rey, I think, later this month. Okay, the pub sheet does not have a publicity date, I guess, because he's such an institution now they don't need to have one. But this is a book 6 or 7. I have read the whole series and I like it. It's YA of a fairly typical kids versus adults stamp, and with intense stratification of society. In this case, interestingly set in an age of terraforming, when your color designation, red being the lowest, all the way up the spectrum, dictates your place in society. That sort of thing, where levels of society are ironclad. They're all run by adults. There's an institute. There are people in lab coats. That sort of thing is designed to plug directly into a lot of the passions and resentments of high school students. That's the world of this type of YA intensely resembles a dystopian mirror view of high school, where freshmen don't mingle with seniors, where seniors don't mingle with juniors, where tyrannical adults rule everything, where parents are noticeably absent from the school experience, where brutality is normal, and everyone dreams of an uprising. That sort of thing is a fairly flat-footed reflection of high school. So in that sense, you have to go into these kinds of things, this or the Hunger Games or whatever, expecting that. You have to go in expecting that that's what you're going to get. When you do that, I think this author is really good at a whole bunch of things. And so I have followed this series all along. And this book, one thing he's not good at is contextualizing, despite how big this is. He has plenty of room to contextualize, but he stinks at it. So this book would be pretty much incomprehensible to a reader coming to it without having read any of the other Red Rising novels. I would advise, if you like fantasy YA, I would advise maybe finding the first book. At your library will certainly have it, and give that a try. And if you like the author's style, there's quite a bit to like in his style. If you like his style, then you've got a whole series in front of you. And this is the next one. I'm assuming this is out now, or will be out soon, maybe the first week in August. And I liked it. But I liked the reason it's a qualified recommendation is because I liked it as a fan of the series. I couldn't possibly recommend it as a book on its own, which is kind of a harsh thing to say, but nevertheless, the author at this point is clearly writing for fans of his series. I just wish more authors, he's not the only one who fails in this regard. I wish more authors who did this sort of thing would care more about making each book stand alone. But the next book is a much more thorough recommendation. It's only the so-called literary fiction snobs who won't have any interest in it. Other than that, I think it will appeal to pretty much everybody. We saw it on this channel before. This is the finished copy of Derek Millman's Swipe Right for Murder, in which a 17-year-old boy goes to a swank hotel in New York and finds all sorts of things wrong, and suddenly he's on the run from the law. And this is, I don't know if you can make it out here, it has Jimmy on the spine. This is a James Patterson Presents novel. He got his own imprint to help mold the James Pattersons of tomorrow. And this Derek Millman, I don't know anything about him. Oh, he's young. He's worked as a playwright, screenwriter, film school teacher, DJ, and underground humor magazine publisher. He's a classically trained actor and has performed on stages across the country and appeared in numerous TV shows, commercials, and films. And he currently resides in Brooklyn, where he lives full-time. The cover jacket says Swipe Right for Murder is his second novel for young adults. And I found that strange. Because this is, to me, an example of that blurring that I've talked about on this channel a few times, where I will sometimes get novels that are billed as adult novels, and they are clearly YA. It's the authors and the publishers' attempt to smuggle in YA concerns, monomanias, and sensibilities into the adult fiction market, to the ultimate adulteration of the adult fiction market. There's a reason why YA is on one side of the fence and adult fiction is on the other side of the fence, mainly the reasons that I talked about. Because YA is aimed at a world whose inhabitants fundamentally lack control over their own daily destinies, a world that is pumped to the eyeballs with sexual hormones, and a world in which it's us versus them, with the demarcation being age. And that would be silly to import into adult fiction. But another element of YA is that it's starker, it's more Manichaean in its portrayal of emotions. There's much less in terms of shades of gray, sometimes with really good YA, but I would say that it doesn't need to be. It's not a failure for YA to be so black and white. It's a feature of the subgenre. Whereas, I don't want to see that imported into adult fiction. And this struck me as the obverse of that coin, because there's nothing in this. Just because the main character is 17 years old, I don't think many people would call Catcher in the Rye YA. Just because the main character is 17 years old, I don't think makes this YA at all. So the Dust Jacket, that author description I only read when I got the finished copy. I had already read the book in the advanced copy, which didn't have that description. So that caught me by surprise, because I didn't. This was not a YA novel in any way. This was a James Patterson novel that just happens to have a young protagonist. But I really liked it. It will grip you right from the beginning, and it will keep going. It will keep gripping you. So that gets a broader recommendation. And then I want to finish up with a book that I wholeheartedly recommend. It is a work in translation. It is called Armstrong. It's by Torben Kuhlmann, and it's from the folks at North South Press, and it is about a mouse who goes to the moon. Armstrong. It's translated, I presume, from the German. It's a translated kids book. The original came out in 2016, and now we have this version, in which our heroic mouse, I don't know if you can make out the visuals, but he works out a rocket. He uses only the materials at hand. An old alarm clock shoots him out over Times Square in Manhattan a long time ago, and using all of those tools, he manages to blast off to the moon, and he gets there before humans do, and so that when humans get there. Here, let me show you this. This is just too good not to show you. When humans get there, they find a tiny little flag with mouse tracks all around. Look at that. This is absolutely wonderful. It's an absolutely wonderful kids book. I'm so glad that the folks at this publisher decided to translate it. Who knows how many equally wonderful kids books just don't get translated. But oh my, oh my. And don't let this fool you. The cover design is one of those that's made to look scuffed. It's made to look like this is 50 years old. We're in the anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission, and this is one of the most charming books to mark that anniversary that I have ever seen, because a mouse gets to the moon before humans do. So I wanted to recommend that, absolutely. This is either out now or coming out soon, and it's well worth your time, even if you're one of the many adults I know, including yours truly, who reads kids' books simply for themselves. I mean, I will read this. There's a group of kids I have in mind that I will read this to, but I have plenty of kids' picture books that I just have for myself because they're so good. so anyway, so there you go. That's a TBR torture for you. We have, and I'm the reason for the horrible backlighting is so that you can see the beam, at least a little. So we have Armstrong, a translated kids book. We have Swipe Right for Murder. With that title, a few of you emailed me and said, with that title, there's no chance you weren't going to like it. Well, you were right. I loved it. Then we have this huge thing here. This is Dark Age by Pierce Brown. Huge new addition to his Red Rising series. Then Know It All Society by the author of The Internet of Us. Vanishing Ice, all about, the title says it all, but this is with charts and graphs. And Hollow Kingdom, a novel about a crow who rides a dog to the rescue of his master. So there you go. That is TBR torture for this Thursday. But I'll be back. I have other bookish stuff to talk about. Thank you, BookTube.